It's all a matter of perspective, tied to time and place, love and friendship, life and death. Everything is subjective. Choices, answers, good and evil. Einstein was right. Time is relative to the observer. When you're looking down the barrel of a gun, time slows down. Your whole life flashes by, heartbreak and scars. Stay with it, and you can live a lifetime in that split second. How funny is that?
Max Payne was really the first thing that made me think seriously about writing stories. I played it as a kid, and sure, the action was fun, all the slow motion bullet time stuff was insanely cool, but what hooked me was something way deeper. It was that gritty, heavy vibe, Max's personality, and above all, the writing.
A false start. The hospital bed wasn't the beginning. It was past the point of no return, a fatal choice already made, and it would get worse before the end.
The monologues, the almost absurdly dramatic lines, every word had this cliché, cheesy noir flavor, and somehow it all worked perfectly. I mean, there was nothing like it. For me, it hit harder than any book I was reading at the time, and I read a lot back then. You see, Max Payne was my real first taste of noir. I didn't know what it was at the time, but looking back, it was that genre, the bleak streets, the flawed hero with a haunted past. Every detail was soaked in shadows. Later on, I did get into the classics, the real noir stuff that inspired Max Payne in many ways, as confirmed by the writer Sam Lake. That is, Sam Spade, Philip Marlowe, those are some classic noir heroes. But Max was where it started for me. Everything was set up to immediately capture my young mind. It was a cool vibe, the character was a real badass, and the action was a lot of fun. The whole idea of a hero who had a bone to pick with the villains he ran up against, that whole one man against the world vibe, every man can see the appeal in that. And they still do. There are many great revenge stories nowadays of a one-man army. You can look at Liam Neeson in Taken, Keanu Reeves in John Wick, and so on. At that time, being so young and impressionable, I still had a little interest in writing. Having read so many books, I felt that I wanted to take it up and write my own kind of story, but it was Max Payne that gave that inspiration. So, after playing through the Max Payne games, I immediately dove at the first pile of paper I could find with a bic in hand and started writing. Of course, it was a shameless copy of Max Payne. The character's name may have been different, but much of the style and dialogue was pretty much word for word from Max Payne. And it was shameless because I was 12 years old and I didn't really grasp my imagination just yet. That being said, even then I could see they weren't unique and they were missing something. I certainly couldn't write a novel at that age. Most of those little stories ended up in a pile in the trash, but the feeling remained. From time to time, I would return to the video game just to hear James McCaffrey's voice as he read those classic lines.
The trick in my situation was that there was no trick, no matter what the movies tell you. No rules, no secret mantra, no roadmap. It wasn't about how smart or how good you were. It was chaos and luck. And anyone who thought different was a fool. All you could do was to hang on madly, as long and as hard as you could.
Several years passed, and around 18, I started to write my first book. It is a book that I was writing when I should have been studying for my final exams. Still, I think it was time well spent, because it was the first novel I had completed and I learned a lot in doing so. Again, one of the characters did have a bit of Max Payne in his personality, but otherwise it was very much my own character, and I was happy with the result. And while the story was more of a contemporary action with some supernatural elements, I've always thought about writing my own detective noir story. I've written a bit of fantasy, I've written a bit of thriller, but I've yet to write a detective fiction that is centered around such a character as Max Payne. And part of me still very much wants to do that. Of course, Max Payne wasn't my early inspiration to become a writer. Over the years, I had read many books that also inspired me, movies, music, video games other than Max Payne. A great example actually being Alan Wake, a game made by the same creators of Max Payne. One thing I like to see in any type of fiction is an unapologetic straightforwardness to the story. I believe that there's a lot of forced intellectualism in fiction nowadays, where people try to seem more clever than they actually are, and the story suffers as a result. I enjoy a complex story, I enjoy the twists and turns, I enjoy the thoughtful, philosophical moments. But sometimes I feel that they are way too stressed, way too forced for them to be genuine, and they come off as flat and uninspired. These simple platitudes that maybe hit in earlier days, but simply don't work on me now. But Max Payne is so unapologetically straightforward that you could jump in at any point in the story and understand why he is the hero and happily root for him in this dark, oppressive atmosphere. But it's that straightforwardness, that ability to capture the reader at any point in the story, that I strive to achieve in all my writing.